The anime starts with a girl named Sei, working late at the office. When she gets home, she is transported to the kingdom of Salutania. The problem is that not only she has been summoned, but a girl named Era. At that moment, Prince Kyle declares that Era is the saint they were waiting for and dismisses Sei. Later, Sei is told that the kingdom of Salutania is continuously fogged by a mist called miasma, and when the miasma is so thick that it causes problems by attracting monsters, a saint will be summoned, but this time, two appeared. Sei wants to go home, but that is impossible, so a guy apologizes for Prince Kyle's rude behavior and dismissing her so blatantly and asks her to stay in the palace. 2 weeks later, Sei can't stand the boredom in the palace and goes out for a walk and accidentally ends up in a garden with many flowers and sits down to enjoy the scent of lavender. At that moment, a guy named Jude arrives and tells her that those flowers are part of a research to make potions at the Medicinal Flora Research Institute, and that seems very interesting to Sei, so she asks him to show it to her. Throughout the day, Jude shows her around the institute and the use of different potions. The next day, Sei returns to the Research Institute and Johan, the director, offers her a job as a researcher and she gladly accepts, so the next day, she moves to the institute. Johan puts Sei under Jude's care, who first teaches her how to make a healing potion using medicinal herbs, although she can't understand how he imbues the potion with magic power since she has never used magic. Then Jude takes her hands and makes her feel his magic so that she knows how to search for the magic power inside her and she manages to feel it. After that, Jude helps her prepare her own potion, but Sei doesn't know how much magic power to imbue the cauldron with, but luckily, Johan stops her before she makes a mistake and Jude congratulates her for managing to make her first low-grade potion. The next day, Sei prepares to make many more potions, but a guy shows her the potion she made yesterday and says that her potion is 50% more effective. She tells Jude about this strange event and he checks her potion again and says that it has the same color as all the low-grade potions and shows her that the other potions of different grades have different colors. Then Sei sets out to practice how to make higher-grade potions. 3 months later, Sei achieves her goal but has almost used up all the medicinal herbs in the institute, and that without running out of magic power, although now they have thousands of healing potions as a result of her continuous practices. Suddenly, the Research Institute receives an emergency request for all the healing potions they have. It turns out that the Third Order of Knights ventured into the Western Wood to subdue the monsters that live there, but they ran into a salamander, which left many injured. When they arrive at the castle, Sei can't believe the number of wounded there are, and while helping to heal them, she hears the knights complaining that Prince Kyle didn't let the saint come down when she's supposed to have great healing powers. Suddenly, Johan asks Sei to give him a high-grade potion and she gives him the crafted one by her and forces Commander Albert to drink it. He is very weak, but when he drinks his potion, his body starts to glow and he heals immediately. Days later, Johan informs Sei that they received a bonus thanks to her hundreds of potions and he wants her to ask for something for herself, and she asks for a kitchen, as she wants to cook for herself because the food of this world is not to her liking. Days later, the kitchen is ready and Johan asks her to cook him something from her homeworld because he is curious, and when she makes him crispy chicken using some medicinal herbs as seasoning, he is totally surprised and delighted by the taste of the food and asks Sei to teach the cooks of the institute which medicinal herbs they can use as seasonings. Later, Jude tells Sei that Johan is waiting for her in the office of Albert Hawk, the commander of the Third Order of Knights. There, she is enthralled by how handsome Albert is, as he looks very different from how he looked when he was injured and weak. Albert wants to thank her for saving his life and tells her that his platoon is going on an expedition to the southern forest, and since Johan told him that she wants to get more medicinal plants from that forest, he offers to escort her and her colleagues. This pleasantly surprises Sei, and she gladly accepts. The next day, Sei is surprised to see no monsters around the southern forest, and that also surprises Albert. At noon, they stop to eat and Sei cooks a soup with medicinal herbs that help reduce fatigue, which is so delicious that Albert sits next to her and can't stop praising her. The next day, Johan informs Sei that he received several reports from the Knights of the Third Order, all of whom reported that after eating her soup, their abilities increased by 50%, so Johan asks her not to cook in public because if word of her abilities spread, chaos could break out. Later, Sei goes to the palace library to look for more books on medicinal herbs and runs into Elizabeth, a blonde girl as beautiful as a porcelain doll. Elizabeth sees the book Sei is carrying and praises her for being able to read Salutania books. After that, Sei runs into Albert, who saw her leaving the castle and galloped on his horse to catch up with her and offer her a ride. They chat the whole way, and although she gets nervous about his proximity, she feels at ease with him. Some time later, their horseback riding would become more frequent, as well as her encounters with Elizabeth in the library. One day, the blonde praises Sei's smooth skin and she says that she made her own cosmetics, so she offers to make them for her too. Elizabeth then tells her that a beautiful and popular girl recently joined the academy and she only has male friends, even though they are already engaged. This severely affected the confidence of Elizabeth's friend who stopped going to school because her face is acne, so Sai promises to make her a lotion that will solve her problem. Days later, Sai meets up with Elizabeth and her friend Nicole. At first, she doesn't want to use the lotion, but Elizabeth shows her that it is a very effective lotion and advises her to use it to make herself happy, not for someone else, and that moves Nicole, who takes the lotion and thanks them smiling. Days later, it's so hot that Sai asks Jude to cool down the bucket of water with magic so she can put her feet in it, and he does so with the warning that she should do it where no one can see her because it's improper for a woman to show her bare legs. Later, Sai is so pleased with having her feet in cold water that without thinking twice she allows someone to enter her kitchen, and it's none other than Albert, who immediately closes the door when he sees her legs. After that, Sai opens the door looking presentable, and he says that he found out about her day off and offers to accompany her to see the capital, and she gladly accepts. When they arrive at the city, Albert offers her his hand to help her get off the carriage and doesn't let go of her throughout their excursion. They walk around the market and then sit down to eat at a food stand. Albert notices that she is hot and uses his magic to put ice cubes in her drink, which surprises her because according to Jude, very few people can use ice magic. At the end, they go to a jewelry shop because Albert has some business to do and Sei marvels at the hair ornaments, but they are too expensive so she doesn't buy any. On the way home, she falls asleep on Albert's shoulder, and when he wakes her up, he gives her a souvenir that he bought for her. When she is alone, she opens the box and marvels at the hair ornament that she had pinned on before, although it has a different color of jewels. The next day, Joan asks Sai about her date with Albert, and she totally denies that it was a date, but Joan argues that Albert does not invite any woman on an outing, and while it is customary for upper-class men to help a lady get off a carriage, it is not customary to hold their hand during the entire outing. He tells her that it is not common to give such an expensive piece of jewelry to anyone. In the afternoon, Sai puts on a hair ornament and goes to the library, and immediately Elizabeth realizes that it was a gift from Albert, because it is customary for a gentleman to give jewelry of the color of his eyes to the woman he courts, which makes Sei blush. The next day, Jude sees hair ornament and tells her that it is an enchanted artifact, which reacts to her magic and increases it. That sounds really interesting to Sei, so Johan offers to get her a teacher to teach her how to enchant items, since he has a hunch that she'll be good at it. He takes her to the Royal Magic Assembly, where one of the enchanters explains to her that she must focus her magic on a stone and put whatever enchantment she wants on it. And what she wants is to enchant a stone that negates magic damage, basically a magic shield. She first tries on a small one but breaks it very quickly due to her powerful magic. Then Erhard Hawk intervenes and gives her a gem because he realized that she is trying to enchant the stone to repel all types of magic damage, not just one specific one, and she admits that this is true. After a while, Sei manages to enchant the gem and Erhard gives it to her as a gift. After that, he gives her several gems with different types of enchantments that cause headaches, minor injuries, or poisoning, and Sei's task is to counteract them with her hands, and surprisingly, she manages to counter them all, earning several gasps of surprise. Weeks later, Erhard goes to talk to Johan and Sei, and tells them that the Night Orders found out about the repelling stones that Sei enchanted and asked for more of them, but the Magic Assembly has not been able to replicate Sei's work, so he asks her to go and give them a hand. She quickly agrees, but Johan intervenes and tells Erhard that Sei should be properly compensated. All day long, Sei spends her time enchanting stones and gems to increase resistance to magic damage for the First Night Order. After Erhard checks all the enchanted stones, he briefly smiles, surprising all the enchanters in the Magic Assembly. Before leaving, Erhard asks Sei what she wants to be rewarded with, and she quickly replies that she wants to see a craftsman to make her a necklace. The next day, she goes to visit Albert and gives him a necklace with a gem embedded in it as a gift. This gem is the first one she enchanted, and it will increase his resistance to magical damage on his expeditions. Albert is so happy that he kneels down and kisses her hand in gratitude, leaving her completely dazzled. Weeks later, Erhard and Johan bring one of Sei's enchanted gems to King Siegfried. This gem is much more powerful than the previous ones, and they suspect that perhaps Sei is the true saint, but they will only know that when the Grand Magus Yuri awakens. Meanwhile, Sei and Jude help carry large shipments of potions to the barracks of the Third Order of Knights, and some knights tells her that they will soon go on an expedition with the Second Order of Knights to the forest where they encountered the salamander. Then Sei asks why the First Order is not accompanying them, and the knights tell her that the First Order is protecting Prince Kyle and Era, the saint, although the knights joke that Sei looks more like a saint than Era herself. Deep inside, Sei also suspects it but doesn't want to say it out loud because she prefers to continue living a normal life. Days later, Sei uses her day off to go to the library to look for information on how to make potions more efficient than high-grade ones. First, she is interested in a book about the Holy Affinity, but it is too complicated for her. Luckily, the king appears and gives her a beginner's tome. Then he apologizes for the rough treatment of his son Kyle when she came to this world, and she quickly realizes that he is King Siegfried. He tells her that he wants to reward her for all her work towards the kingdom, but she refuses. Even so, he says that he will thank her at the court. Days later, Sei cuts her finger while cooking and heals it using magic. After that, she brings the snacks she cooked to the wounded who are recovering in the hospital after the last expedition. There, she meets a knight who lost his arm in battle. He says he will leave the Order of Knights and return home since he can't stay because he only has one arm. He is very sad because he worked very hard to be a knight, and he doesn't know any powerful magician who knows how to use holy magic. The story squeezes Sei's heart and she decides to help him, even though such magnitude of magic will reveal her true identity as a saint. Then, she concentrates, and with her holy magic, she manages to give the knight his arm back, which leaves everyone stunned. Sei knows that there is no turning back, so she decides to heal all the knights who are seriously injured, and after a while she achieves miracles, such as giving back sight to a blind man. The amount of holy magic used is too much and she becomes weak, but even so she uses one last spell to heal all those with minor injuries at once. After that, all the knights start to escort her wherever she goes since they firmly believe that she is the true saint. Days later, Joan tells Sei that the Royal Magic Assembly is ready to appraise her and find out if she is the saint. It turns out that the Grand Magus Yuri fell into a coma after summoning the saint, but now he has woken up and is ready to examine Sei. She is nervous because the saint's job is to go into battle with the Knight Orders, and she has never been in a battle. Not to mention that she will have to move to the capital and go to the academy where Era is. Sei asks Johan to let her stay and live at the institute even if the Grand Magus says that she is the saint and he promises to do what he can. Later, they arrive at the Royal Magic Assembly where Yuri and Erhardt are waiting for them, and Yuri tells Sei to relax so that he can appraise her, but Sei's magic power is so great that it overwhelms Yuri and he is unable to appraise her. Then Yuri asks her to cast the heal spell as he wants to observe something, and when she does it, a white light and golden sparks surround her. The others are shocked because when Yuri casts heal spell, he is surrounded by a white light. After that, Sei and Johan leave and Yuri goes to an audience with King Siegfried. The Grand Magus tells the king that Sei's magic power is greater than his, and he is sure that she is the saint and not Era, since the other girl has only shown great ability to learn, and when she casts spells, she only lights up with white light, unlike Sei's golden sparkles. When Yuri leaves, the king and the Prime Minister of Salutania, Dominic, talk worriedly about the consequences of Prince Kyle's disrespect to Sei. The only solution is to prepare Sei's path and decide to honor her in court. The next day, Sei receives an invitation from the king to a court audience. She does not know what to wear or how to behave, so she is brought to the castle and her former maid and her assistants prepare her. Hours later, she looks in the mirror and admires the white robe that was given to her and thinks that the king is going to name her as the saint. As she leaves her room, she runs into Albert, who offers to escort her to the king's audience, although the distance is only a few meters. As Sei enters the court, she sees all the nobles and is shocked when the king deeply apologizes for Prince Kyle's slight on the day she came to this world, and when he asks her what reward she wants for all her hard work to the kingdom. She starts to refuse but sees the noble's gaze harden, so she thinks about what she really wants and asks the king for many books of magic, especially the forbidden tomes, and not only that, she wants a magic instructor to help her improve, and her request is received with applause from the entire court. Meanwhile, at the Royal Academy, Damien, Prime Minister Dominic's son, tells Kyle what the king did, which makes him angry and says that soon Era will prove that she is the true saint. Days later, Sei starts her magic lessons with Grand Magus Yuri, which shocks her, but he tells her he wants to research her abilities. After a long theoretical class, they start the practical class. Yuri quickly realizes that her magic power is different from theirs, and then takes her to the training yard. They spend hours practicing how to manipulate magic. Sei is totally exhausted and Yuri laughs, saying that he is going easy on her. Days later, Sei goes to talk to Albert, who as soon as he sees her, puts a hand on her cheek worried. He notices that she has lost weight because of the hard training with the Grand Magus and asks her to take care of herself. Sei's heart beats so fast that she almost forgets to tell Albert that she wants to attend the Second Order of Knights training exercises to heal them as they get hurt, as it will help her speed up her own training. Thanks to this, Yuri sees progress in her and tells her that she will surely be taken on the next expedition to the Western Woods. The next day, Sei walks gloomily to the castle since once in a while she is training on how to be a lady. She must learn etiquette and dance because the social season is approaching and she will surely be invited to several formal dinners. Fortunately, Albert shows up at her dance lesson and offers to dance with her to make it easier for her. After the last dance lesson of the day, Albert tells Sei that he can be her escort when she is invited to parties or dinners, and she nervously accepts. A week later, Maid Mary tells Sei that she has been invited to have tea with Prince Kyle's fiancé, and she should dress appropriately. Later, Sei is surprised to meet Elizabeth for tea, and the blonde tells her that she has heard all kinds of tales about her and her great healing abilities, and opens up to her about how she always knew she came from another world. And not only that, she tells her that the popular girl who came to the academy is Era, and she is always surrounded by all the gentlemen. Even though they are engaged, they are her admirers, including her fiancé Prince Kyle. Days later, Era sees Sei for the first time in a long time and can't help but remember how it all started. She was going to the convenience store to buy dinner when she was suddenly transported to Salutania, and despite her tears and doubts, Prince Kyle named her the saint. Sometime later, Prince Kyle took her around Salutania, and she realized that he is not very popular due to his strictness, and Damien assured her that he only seeks the best for the kingdom, which led her to accept her destiny as a saint, and the prince promised to find a way to return her home. After all, she is just a teenager who wants to see her parents again. First, she started going to the academy where her control of magic was almost perfect, so the prince and his friends assured her that she was on the right path, although she began to tremble at the slightest mention that she would soon have to accompany the Order of Knights on expeditions. Unfortunately, Kyle and his friends' constant attentions and care towards Era were not well received by the female students, and although they tried to explain to her that her closeness to the prince was inappropriate, she had no friends to lean on, so she preferred to be by the prince's side. Some time later, Prince Kyle received reports about Sei's great healing abilities and confessed to Damien that he ignored her because of her dull appearance, and now that mistake could cost him the ascension to the throne. Damien agrees with him and says that Sei has a lot of support from the noble houses, and they could support the ascension of the second prince instead of Kyle's. This worried Kyle because if it was proven that Sei is the true saint, Era would be destined to live forever in Salutania, so Kyle decided to continue playing the incompetent prince until he can't take it anymore. Currently, Kyle continues to protect Era with an iron fist and does not let anyone get close to her, even Elizabeth, who decided to offer her a helping hand to stop the gossip that is going around about Kyle and Era. Rain, the second prince, sees the altercation between Kyle and Elizabeth and intervenes, saying that the professor wants to talk to him about the next expedition. Alone, Rain and Elizabeth worry about Era's fate since the rumor that Sei is the real saint grows stronger every day. On the other hand, alone, Era promises herself to greet Elizabeth even if Kyle gets in the way. Days later, the king fulfills what he promised Sei and lets her into the library of forbidden books. There she meets Yuri, and she tells him that she is looking for a way to make potions more powerful than the high-grade ones. Then Yuri tells her one of the secrets of magic. Plants also have a bit of magic, so maybe she should learn holy conjures to imbue her magic into plants. At night, she remembers how in video games holy water was used to grow plants, so the next day she tries to imbue her magic into water, but fails miserably. At night, Joan sees Sei deep in thought, and she tells him what she is trying to do, and he says that maybe the solution is not in the books because each saint casts spells differently, and the answer is surely within her. Later, Sei goes out to look at the starry sky and admits that she barely remembers her old life, but that doesn't make her sad because her current life is full of people she loves like Albert, Jude, Johann, and her colleges. Suddenly, golden sparkles come out of her heart and go directly to the plants, which begin to shine goldenly. The next day, she harvests those plants and all her colleagues are able to make high-grade potions, but that phenomenon has not been repeated no matter how hard she tries. Days later, the Institute receives a request from the Institute. They want Sei to join the expedition in the Western Woods. She knows that there will be many injured, so she agrees to go. In addition, she wants to collect some extravagant medicinal herbs. The next day, all of Sei's colleagues gather to say goodbye to her, and Albert himself comes to pick her up, promising everyone that he will take care of her. Although when she joins the expedition, she shares a carriage with Yuri, who fervently questions her about how she imbued magic into the plants. He is an avid researcher, so for him, Sei is a very interesting person. Later, the expedition stops to camp, and Albert happily notices that Sei is wearing the hair ornament he gave her and tells her that the ornament will protect her from everything, although that is also his job and Yuri's. Although Yuri says that they have not encountered strong monsters, something odd, but as they get closer to the center of the forest, the air is difficult to breathe due to the thick miasma. Suddenly, a salamander attacks them, and Sei protects them with a shield that alerts a horde of monsters, and now they are attacked from both sides at once. The situation gets complicated because the monsters do not stop appearing, and only Albert and Yuri are able to defeat a salamander. Suddenly, Sei is attacked from behind, but her hair ornament senses the danger and creates a wall of ice to protect her, and that distracts Albert, who is fiercely bitten by a monster. Sei panics and screams desperately to reach Albert, and this activates something in her. Golden lights come out of her body, and she manages to make all the monsters and miasma disappear, turning the gloomy forest into a beautiful one. After that, the expedition returns home and Yuri is the most excited about Sei's display of power. He calls it magic purification and wants to research more about it, while Albert deeply thanks her for saving his life. The next day, everyone at the Institute treats her like a deity, and that makes her worry that she won't be able to stay living at the Institute as she is named the Saint. But Joan says that she could go on expeditions and then return to the Institute if that is what she wants, and she accepts. The next day, Yuri and Sei meet at the castle for their magic lesson, and although she tries to imbue magic into a plant, she fails, and he regrets not having observed her better that night. After that, they walk around the castle and hear a new altercation between Elizabeth and Kyle. She wants to be friends with Era and he doesn't allow it, accusing her of being a jealous fiancé, and the whole ruckus has attracted everyone in the court. Then Yuri runs to get help while Sei is questioned by Kyle, but fortunately Albert arrives quickly and stands between them. Suddenly, the king arrives and harshly accuses his son of wanting to harm the saint, and Kyle continues to play the fool, pretending not to know what he means since he has always protected Era. That only hardens the king, and he seriously says all the things that Sei has achieved and how she has earned her true position as a saint with the support of the Knight Orders and the Grand Magus himself, unlike Era, who has not achieved anything since she arrived. To finish, he asks Elizabeth and Kyle to finish the talk alone. There the prince confesses that it is all his fault. He was the one who insisted that Era was the saint and only asks that she be freed from all blame, and the king accepts this, ordering Elizabeth and Rain to be her new caretaker. After that, Elizabeth and Kyle go out and she tells him that she realized that all this was his plan so that no one thinks of Era as an imposter. On the contrary, now she is a victim. He continues to play the fool, but she recognizes his kindness by making himself out to be an incompetent prince in order to save Era. Sometime later, Sei is recognized as the true saint, and she tries to befriend Era, and thanks to Elizabeth, the three become friends. On the other hand, things in the countrysides are tense. Everyone asks for help from Sei, especially the Clausner domain, who has stopped the export of medicinal herbs. One day, Albert goes to have tea with Johann, and Sei is told that the commander will soon be leaving for the Clausner region because the conditions are getting worse in that area, and Sei signs up to go because that place is called the Holy Land of Alchemists. Although in reality, Albert came to tell her that the Clausner domain had requested that Sei go with them, and the commander wanted to oppose it because of how dangerous the expedition can be. But if Sei wants to go, he will not stand between her and her desire to learn about Clausner's medicinal herbs. When they arrive at Clausner's domain, he greets them with great cordiality, and Sei is delighted with the tea and food since they use their own herbs to cook and boil tea. Clausner notices that she is interested in the medicinal herbs of the region and promises her a meeting with the castle's master alchemist, and Sei happily accepts. On the way to her room, Albert escorts her and can't help but praise how pretty she looks in her white gown. She turns very red and tries to tell him that he also looks handsome in the moonlight, but her shyness gets the better of her and she runs to her room. The next day, Sei meets the castle's master alchemist, an old lady named Corinna. She teaches her how to make different potions and is surprised when Sei makes hundreds of them in a moment. At that moment, Leo, Corinna's grandson, enters the house asking for the potions he ordered last night, and his grandmother scolds him for ordering them without advance notice, but thanks to Sei, his order is ready. At night, Corinna goes to talk to Clausner and confirms that Sei is the real saint, and she thinks that they should show them the alchemist's diaries so that she can learn to bless the fields and thus save the region. The next day, Corinna takes Sei to a secret room and gives her a diary of Clausner's mother. She was the great alchemist, and the old lady insists that only Sei should read it. The diary tells the story of a woman who lived in Clausner, but one day the drought hit the region and soon the famine made people sick, including the woman's little brother. She managed to create potions to cure the famine, but no plants grew in the region until one day, her little brother sang her a song, and the love for her brother made her heart shine, and the fields were flooded with golden lights, and suddenly the fields had healed. Sei finishes the diary and thinks that the grand alchemist was a saint, but her thoughts are interrupted by the Knights of Clausner. Leo's platoon returned injured from the expedition, and she runs to heal them, and Leo tells her that Albert's Knight Order was also attacked. She then runs desperately to reach to Albert, and when she gets to him, she sees him sitting covered in blood, and her heart hurts so much for him that powerful golden lights come out of her body, healing everyone in the room. But her cast doesn't work on Albert, since the blood blood wasn't his, but someone else's. Later, Sei apologizes for the ruckus in the room and he asks her how she managed to recast her golden magic, and she doesn't know either, and he theorizes that maybe it activates when she thinks someone is in danger, but the first time there wasn't anyone in danger until she remembers what she thought that night. While she walked through the medicinal herb garden, she thought about everyone she loved from Salutania, and that included Albert. That makes her blush and she runs away. Since she finally understands the alchemist's diary, the power of the saint is the power of love itself. Yuri is angry that he wasn't taken on the expedition to Clausner's domain, so he gets excited when a letter arrives from there asking for reinforcements, and he decides to take Era with him, who recently joined the Royal Magic Assembly. At Clausner, Sei can't control the golden magic that radiates from her when she thinks of Albert looking at her lovingly, so she goes to Corinna and asks for help to practice how to handle this new power. Then Corinna puts pots with arid soil in front of her, and Sei turns red thinking about Albert's gaze, but she achieves her goal. Golden lights come out of her heart and bathe the pots, and Corinna says that they won't know if it worked until 2 days from now until a sprout comes out. At that moment, Leo arrives and proposes to Sei to stay in Clausner and be part of his mercenary company. He thinks she is a mere alchemist who casts healing spells, and he does not want to let her go. Unfortunately, the proposal is overheard by Albert, who angrily intervenes, saying that Sei will return with him to the capital soon, and Corinna kicks her grandson, revealing that he was proposing to the saint to join the mercenary company, which embarrasses Leo, and he apologizes. Alone, Albert tells Sei that they will soon go out to explore the forests where the most monsters have been seen, and she must accompany them, and that makes her blush. The next day, the expedition begins, and Sei can't help but blush every time Albert takes her hand, although he feels a little jealous of Leo and his friendship with Sei. As they go deeper into the forest, Albert and Leo agree that the lack of monsters is due to Sei's presence, but there are still some hidings. The knights find slime monster digested juice, so they stay alert, but are soon surrounded by hundreds of small violet slime monsters. These burn skin when they come into contact. There are so many of them that Sei and Albert's shields are not enough. Fortunately, Yuri, Era, and the Magic Assembly arrive, burning all the slimes. With the help of Yuri's fire attacks, they manage to make their way back to Clausner's castle, though they leave a lot of damage in the woods. 2 days later, sprouts have come out of the pots that Sei enchanted, and this time Corinna asks her to enchant a square of arid land, and she does so. This is seen by Yuri, who immediately begins to theorize about Sei's golden powers and what effect they will have on the land, and Corinna joins in theorizing with him. After that, they take Sei to a field of dry land and ask her to cast her magic on them, though it cost her a lot of energy. In the afternoon, she is completely exhausted, and Yuri says that the only way to perfect a technique is to repeat it over and over again, which makes her blush since she still has to think of Albert's loving gaze to activate her golden magic. The next day, the expedition continues, and Sei asks Yuri to restrain herself when using his fire attacks because they do a lot of damage to the forest, and he agrees. They search for the swamp where the toxic slimes emerge from, but on the way, they are attacked by many of them, and although they manage to get close to the swamp, they are all very injured because Sei had to save her energy to use it in the swamp. Once they get there, Sei starts to cast her golden spell, but is distracted by Albert and Era's screams, so Yuri has no choice but to unleash the inferno fire, burning all the monsters and with them part of the forest. Sei manages to cast her golden spell, finishing off all the monsters and miasma of the swamp, leaving only the ashes of the fire inferno that Yuri used. At night, Sei can't stop thinking about the burned forest, and Albert notices it and tells her that she can ask him for anything she wants. He will be her knight. The next day, at Sei's request, they return to the burned forest, and Sei tries to concentrate to return the forest to how it was before. That will take a lot of energy from her, and Albert, feeling that she needs his support, takes her hands and encourages her. Suddenly, Sei's body begins to glow golden, and so does the entire forest, slowly coming back to life, turning into a beautiful green forest. Everyone marvels at her immense power, but Sei faints when she wakes up. She realizes she is in Albert's arms, and she blushes and asks him to let her walk, although he asks her to at least let him hold her hand, and she happily accepts. Days later, it is time to leave for Salutania, and Corinna regrets losing such a special student, but deeply thanks her for saving the region and the Clausner forests. After that, when Albert and Sei reach the edges of Salutania, she happily tells him that she is glad to be back home. Season 2. 3 months later, Sei finally has some free time since she spent all this time purifying areas of Salutania on expeditions with the knights. One day, a shipment of tons of medicinal herbs arrives from Clausner along with a letter of thanks from Corinna. The old lady tells Sei that Clausner's forest has returned to its greenery, and many medicinal plants that she thought were extinct have sprouted again. So she sent her many specimens because she knows that Sei will put them to good use. That gives Sei the idea of making new cosmetic creams, and Johan predicts that they will be a hit on the market, and soon she will need to talk to the trading company, so he is going to get ahead of the events and contact them for her. And as Johan had predicted, rumors that Sei will create new cosmetic creams spread among the maids, who offer themselves as guinea pigs for Sei to test on them. The next day, Johan introduces Sei to the managers of the trading company. They are Oscar and Franz. The two assure Sei that they will take care of everything. Some time later, Sei's cosmetic store opens and is a hit among the noblewomen, and Sei suggests to Oscar to classify some creams as less efficient so that everyone has the opportunity to buy them. Oscar thinks it is a great idea, and before Sei returns to the institute, he tells her that there is a new cafe that serves imported tea, and since Albert sees that Sei is interested in going, he takes her. There, they order the famous new imported tea, and Sei is surprised to see that it is coffee, although it tastes different from the one from Japan, because they brew it differently. She immediately starts thinking about everything she needs to brew coffee by herself, which makes Albert smile since it's typical of Sei to look for solutions. Sometime later, the taste for coffee has spread throughout the institute, and Sei warns Johan that it's not good to drink too much. On the other hand, Jude can't believe she found something from her world in a random coffee shop and asks her if she wants something else from her world. The answer is clear. She craves rice, and Johan thinks that Franz might have eaten it somewhere. Days later, Sei and Jude arrive at Morgenhafen and are greeted by Oscar, who is also there to check wares from other kingdoms. He tells them that he is staying at the same inn that they will be going to, so they can ask him whatever they want. The next day, Sei puts on glasses and a wig to go incognito since, according to Johan, it would be very dangerous for others to know her identity as Saint. And not only that, this time she came without Albert because he attracts too much attention. When Jude sees her, he says she looks like a typical merchant's daughter, and together with two bodyguards, who are also dressed incognito, go out to tour Morgenhafen. Sei is delighted by everything she sees, but bad news immediately arrives from the port. A shipment fell on a crewman of the ship that just arrived. Without realizing it, Sei runs to the port and sees the crewman severely injured. The captain of the ship asks for help from anyone who knows how to cast healing magic, but Jude and the knights advise Sei not to intervene or she will give away her identity. Then Sei decides to give the captain a high-grade potion made by her and assures him that it will save his crewman. After that, they return to the inn and tell Oscar that they prefer to return to the inn, and tomorrow they will go out to explore the place again. Suddenly, the captain of the ship arrives at the inn. He is Saren, captain of the export ship of the Kingdom of Zadera, and he tells Sei that he has been looking for her everywhere to thank her for saving his crewman. He wants to pay her for the miraculous potion she gave him, but Sei lies that someone gifted to her and she does not know the price of it. So Saren says he will give her whatever she wants, and Oscar intervenes and says that Saren can show all the wares that he brought from Zadera to Sei. The first thing that Saren shows Sei is Zadera's goods. These are not very popular in Salutania, so they are exported in small quantities, and to Sei's surprise, it is everything that she wanted: peas, peppers, miso, and her beloved rice. After that, she, Jude, and her bodyguards return to Salutania, and she plans to make a Japanese food banquet for all her friends, so she invites everyone, including Albert. He first goes to talk to Johan, who wants to advise him to make his move with Sei, because soon she will start receiving hundreds of marriage proposals and he could lose her. Later, they go to the Institute's garden where Sei awaits them with many Japanese dishes. Era is the happiest of her guests because rice is the soul of the Japanese people, while Yuri does not stop asking Sei questions about her homeland. Meanwhile, in Morgenhafen, Saren writes a letter to his king telling him what happened and informs him that he will stay for a while in Salutania because he must find out which alchemist created the miraculous potion. Sometime later, Sei is informed that the king plans to make her official presentation as a saint on the same day of his ball, and not just any ball. It is the last ball of the season, so all the prominent nobles of the kingdom will be there. Sei doesn't like being the center of attention, but Johan comforts her, saying that Albert will surely act as a shield that night, and she wonders if the commander will remember that he offered to be her escort at social events. Fortunately, in the evening, Albert stops by at the institute and asks to be allowed to accompany her to the ball, which makes Sei blush, and she happily accepts. 2 days later, Marie and her maids carefully dress Sei in her distinctive white Holy Saint robe, and the king officially presents her in a ceremony in front of all the nobles. Later, Sei returns to her room, and there Elizabeth and Rain, the second prince, are waiting for her. He came to greet her and apologize for Kyle's rudeness, but Sei assures him that all is forgiven. Elizabeth then tells her that she wanted to come see her because she rarely sees her dressed so glamorously, and tonight she won't be able to attend the ball, so she wanted to see her even if it's in her pristine white robe. At night, Albert picks up Sei, and they are both speechless at the sight of each other. After catching their breath, they go to the ball, and Albert leads Sei in the dance, although it's easy for them because they've been dance partners in almost all of Sei's dance lessons. After that, Johan asks Sei for a dance and tells her that it's not proper to dance with the same man twice, and that's why Albert made sure to bring reinforcements to prevent Sei's admirers from overwhelming her. After Johan, Sei dances with Yuri, and finally with Erhard, Albert's brother. The next day, Sei goes to have tea with Era and Elizabeth, and the blonde tells them that last night Sei was the envy of many girls. It is something unheard of that the Grand Magus attends the balls, and even more so that the brothers Albert and Erhard agree to dance. Days later, Johan tells Sei that the palace is taking care of rejecting for her the numerous invitations to have tea with different nobles, and she thanks him. Suddenly, an envoy of the king arrives at the institute and tells Sei that the king wants to discuss something important with her. Meanwhile, on a ship, a prince looks out at the sea, and his attendant asks him to return to his cabin because the sea breeze might make him sicker. On the other hand, in Salutania, the king informs Sei that the Prince of Zadera will be coming to Salutania as an exchange student to the Royal Academy, and he wishes to explore the research institutions of the kingdom. The king suggests that Sei move into the palace while the prince visits Salutania since her saint powers are a national secret, but she insists that she should stay at the institute because she is observing the growth of some new medicinal plants. Later, Sei and Jude talk about the prince's coming, and they conclude that it has something to do with the potion she gave to Saren. So Sei decides to listen to the king and move into the palace to avoid all contact with the prince. Days later, the Prince of Zadera arrives, and the king prepares a welcoming ceremony that Sei must attend, although she will do so wearing a white veil that hides her face. When Albert arrives to escort her to the ceremony, he says that she looks beautiful as a bride, and that would make him the groom, which makes the maids squeal at seeing such a pretty couple. At the welcoming ceremony, the Prince of Zadera introduces himself as Tenu, and Sei thinks that he saw her through the veil. A week later, Elizabeth and Sei get together for tea, and the blonde tells her that Tenu is a very studious, friendly prince and is interested in medicinal plants, which makes her suspect that he is in search of Salutania's secrets and gives Sei a list of the medicinal plants that he talks about the most. Sei looks through the list and sees no pattern in the medicinal plants, but Elizabeth warns her that he will visit the research institute soon. 4 days later, Sei returns to the institute since Tenu already visited it yesterday, and she was desperate to check on the growth of her new plants, and Jude tells her that the prince was very interested in medicinal plants and potions. Suddenly, Tenu appears at the institute, and Sei pretends to be a regular researcher, but the prince quickly realizes that she is growing exotic medicinal plants, and she admits that they are plants brought from the Clausner forests. Tenu keeps staring at Sei and tells her that he wants to talk to her another time, but one of his guards tells him that it is time to leave. When he leaves, Sei and Jude run to tell Johan what happened, and he tells them that the prince came to the institute secretly, and that has caused a fuss in the palace because the research institute keeps many secrets of Salutania. So now the king has put bodyguards on the prince so he won't sneak out again without them knowing. Meanwhile, in his chambers, Tenu tells his assistant that he found out something very important at the research institute. He heard a lot of praise for Sei. She is so important that the knights revere her, and her sudden absence surprised many, which means that she has been avoiding him. Then Tenu says that his next move will be rash, but he will not leave Salutania without getting what he wants. The next day, Tenu goes to the research institute, but Jude lies to him that Sei is focused on another project far away from there. But the next day, Tenu comes back and Jude lies to him again, and the routine repeats itself for days until Johan says it's time to give up. The next day, Sei goes back to work at the institute knowing that Tenu will come to look for her like every day, and she will pretend to be a simple researcher like before. But Tenu realizes that she is very skilled in potions and begins to tell her how healing potions are made in Zadera, and that makes Sei lower her guard. Suddenly, he asks if the institute makes high-grade potions, which surprises Sei, and Tenu asks about a potion that is capable of remedying an incurable ailment, and Sei lies that the ingredients for high-grade potions are very expensive, so they are content with making only mid-grade potions in large quantities. This saddens Tenu, and he says that he was wrong in his assumptions, so he leaves the institute. After such a grueling conversation, Sei tells Johan and Jude that the best defense is offense, and she has a plan, so she goes to talk to Oscar and Franz. Sei's plan is to tell Tenu that she wants to market a book about medicinal plants with a section about Zadera's herbs, but Oscar and Franz say that they have been finding out about Saren and have brought her news. According to Franz, Saren is looking for an alchemist who knows how to make high-grade potions in each city he lands in, and apparently when he learns about one, Prince Tenu immediately travels to that region to visit. And not only that, according to Oscar, Saren and the people of Zadera know about the saint, but they believe that her powers are only to subdue monsters, so Tenu is not looking for the saint, but for a powerful alchemist. After that, Sei goes to the library to meet Elizabeth to come up with a plan on how to dig up more about Tenu, but she runs into Albert, who was looking for her to say goodbye. It turns out that the Hawk region is plagued by monsters, and he is going to subdue them, although he says it is an excuse to visit his parents. At that moment, Elizabeth sees them together and tells Sei to take her time alone devising the plan. so Sei has no choice but to tell Albert about Tenu. She wants to know more about the prince, but without causing diplomatic problems, and Albert comes up with the idea of faking a conversation that the prince can hear. The next day, Tenu goes to say goodbye to Sei. Tomorrow, he will be visiting other facilities. Suddenly, Albert arrives and asks Sei if she knows an alchemist who can create high-grade potions that can cure complicated ailments, and Sei says she knows an alchemist friend who can do it, but she must know more about all the symptoms of this ailment first. And all of this is overheard by Tenu. Before leaving, Albert whispers in Sei's ear that he wants to see her when he gets back. Later, Tenu asks to speak to Sei and tells her that he overheard her conversation with the commander and wants her to introduce him to this alchemist friend because he needs a secret favor, and Sei promises to keep it to herself. It turns out that the prince needs a potion that will cure his mother's atrophied arms and legs. The prince's mother is the 7th concubine of the Emperor of Zadera and the least important one. She has been bedridden for years and does not have much time left, so Tenu has been desperately searching for a cure everywhere. And the worst thing is that she is too weak to come to Salutania and tell the alchemist all her symptoms. Sei feels sad about the situation and wishes to find out how to make a panacea, a potion that cures all ailments. Later, she tells Johan about the panacea and he encourages her to follow her passion and try to make one, but warns her that they cannot give it to the Zadera Empire for political reasons. Days later, Sei begins her research on how to make a panacea and hopes that Corinna will guide her, but she receives a letter from the old lady. She doesn't know how to make one, but she recommends several medicinal plants that Sei has never heard of, and even less so Jude, who searches eagerly in the books of Salutania about them. The next day, Sei receives a visit from Tenu. He tells her that he received a letter from his mother's servant. Her condition has worsened, and he will soon return to Zadera to spend his mother's final days with her. Later, Albert returns, and the first thing he does is go visit Sei. He tells him that monsters keep appearing in the Hawk region and he must keep an eye on it. Also, his parents send Sei a gift, honey made from apple blossoms, and Albert says that he would like her to know his homeland, although Sei is more distracted thinking about all the benefits of apples. Suddenly, she comes up with a way to do a panacea based on apples thanks to Albert's honey. At night, Johan takes Sei to a night greenhouse where they planted a baby apple tree, since it is not apple season yet, and Sei thanks him for getting it for her. Then Sei thinks about the honey that Albert gave her and imbues the apple tree with golden magic and makes it grow until it blooms and bears special apples. The next day, King Siegfried calls Tenu and tells him that the royal family has a special potion called panacea. This potion is inherited from generation to generation, and he wants to give it to Tenu as a gift, as a sign of friendship between the two kingdoms. Embarrassed, Tenu tells him that he has nothing to repay him for this gift, since he is the 18th son of the Emperor of Zadera. He is far behind in the line of succession to the throne, but Siegfried insists on giving him the panaceas. Then Tenu accepts them and immediately leaves for the port to return to Zadera, thanking Sei internally because he only talked to her about a possible panacea. Sometime later, Sei goes out on an expedition with Albert's Night Order again, and as always, she is able to subdue the monsters that are born from the swamps. While camping, she observes the fir trees and tells Albert that in Japan, there is the Christmas season where they decorate the tree with lights and ornaments. It is usually a special day to go out on a romantic date with a loved one, although she was always busy at that time of the year because she was an office worker. Albert loves to see Sei talk about what she is passionate about, so he smiles tenderly at her, making her blush. Days later, Sei meets Era and Elizabeth for tea. Elizabeth tells Sei that it is time to think about their engagement. She is the most popular girl in Salutania at the moment, and the palace receives party invitations for her every day. Fortunately, Sei has another schedule today, leaving Elizabeth and Era alone. The blonde is worried about Sei since arranged marriages are normal in Salutania and generally do not respect feelings, and she fears that Sei will be engaged for political purposes. Elizabeth speaks so melancholy about arranged marriages that Era asks her if she is happy with her situation, and she only answers that it is her obligation as the daughter of a Marquess to marry whomever her parents decide. Meanwhile, the king has an audience with his ministers, and Joseph Hawk, Minister of Military Services, informs him that the situation is getting worse in the Hawk region. On the other hand, in the audience they also discuss Sei's future. She will soon have to get engaged, so the noble families will have to present their most prominent suitor. In the evening, Joseph goes home and talks to his brothers, Albert and Erhard. He wants to introduce the two of them as suitors for Sei, and Erhard jokes that he wouldn't mind marrying a girl like Sei, but he won't present himself as a suitor because he knows his brother is interested in her. Albert is serious and just says that he will present himself as a suitor for Sei. Then Joseph asks if they think the Grand Magus will present himself as a suitor, and Erhard flatly denies it. According to him, Yuri only cares about his research on magic and is not interested in marriage. On the other hand, Johan receives a visit from his older brother Laurent, who says that he will introduce him as is Sei's suitor, but Johan flatly refuses because he sees Sei as a little sister. He is practically her guardian in this world. After that, Johan goes to the institute and talks to Sei about what is coming up her marriage. Sei opens up and says that she hasn't thought about her future engagement or marriage since she is always thinking of ways to improve her potions, and she really doesn't want to change her way of life. Then Johan advises her to think about the feelings of him, and Sei can't help but think about Albert, and her heart shines golden just thinking about Albert's smile. Meanwhile, at the castle, news arrives from the Hawk region. They asked for help and the king decides to send Sei. This will be her last mission. The next day, Sei can't stop smiling when they arrive at the mountains, as this is Hawk's domain, Albert's homeland. Her smile soon fades though, as she is overcome with nerves when she meets Albert's parents, Helmut and Claudia. They thank them for coming, and Claudia welcomes them with a grand banquet and tells Sei that there is a small village with hot springs, which surprises Sei, and Albert promises to take her there when they finish subjugating the monsters in the region. According to Helmut, they are crowded in the mines and Yuri assumes there must be a swamp nearby. At night, Albert escorts Sei to her room. She is exhausted after meeting Albert's parents and can't shake her nervousness. The next day, they go to the nearest town. It seems deserted until they hear a scream. The townspeople were fighting against some monsters and Yuri quickly eliminates them. It turns out that monsters never seen before have been appearing lately. They seem undead, and Yuri suggests that the entire mine be evacuated. Suddenly, hundreds of knights arrive. According to them, the word spread in the capital that this would be Sei's last mission, and everyone came to the Hawk region to help. Sei asks Albert and Yuri if it's true that this is her last mission, and Yuri explains that monsters originate from the miasma created by swamps, and ever since she was named Saint, they have been purifying all the swamps in Salutania, and the last swamp is the one in the Hawk region. Later, Sei can't stop thinking that her mission in Salutania has come to an end. The next day, they go to the mine, and on the way, they are attacked by a pack of monster wolves, but they are not just any monsters. No matter how many times they eliminate them, they get back on their feet, and Yuri says that they are the undead. Suddenly, a monstrous boar appears and takes the pack of wolves away, clearing the forest of miasma, leaving them perplexed. On the way to the mine, Albert thinks that besides the swamp, there is something else that is creating monsters. In the mine, Sei smells a putrid smell, and Yuri says that it is the undead monsters, which soon surround them, so the knights protect Sei as much as they can. The problem is that as they advance, the number of monsters increases, and they must burn them to ensure their elimination. They manage to reach the center of the mine, and almost all the knights are injured, so Sei says she will heal them because she has already increased her magic and is able to purify a swamp without fainting from exhaustion. After healing everyone, they reach a small swamp, and Yuri offers to try to purify it. He says that he has developed a new spell and wants to test it so as not to risk Sei. But her spell doesn't work, and while everyone shields Sei, she purifies it by eliminating all the monsters in that sector of the mine. After that, they continue on their way, and when they pass a bridge, the miasma rises towards it and breaks it, making Sei fall into the abyss. Sei lands at the bottom of the mine, and luckily she is not seriously hurt, so she takes one of her potions and regains her strength. She walks aimlessly looking for the exit, feeling a little sad because she always depends on others to save her. Hours later, they reach the bottom, and Albert runs when he feels a breeze. Just like Sei, she thought that an exit was close because of the breeze. Fortunately, they find themselves in the center of the bottom of the mine, and Albert can't help but run to hug her, and Sei closes her eyes, relieved in his embrace. Suddenly, they are interrupted by the miasma that begins to come out, and not only that, a monstrous dragon comes out of the swamp, and they realize that the real swamp was this one and not the other one. The dragon is too strong and soon defeats all the knights, pushing Sei aside, and when it is about to attack her, Sei's hair ornament activates and protects her with an ice shield, but it is not enough and breaks. Suddenly, Albert arrives and stands with his sword enduring the dragon's attack, while Sei prepares her purification spell but can't concentrate because of the worry of seeing Albert fighting the dragon alone. Fortunately, Yuri recovers and helps Albert to contain the dragon, and that gives Sei enough time for her to successfully purify the swamp. After that, everyone leaves the mine, and Albert decides that they should stay for a while monitoring the place and asks Sei not to leave his side. On the way home, Sei can't help but admire the flowers and blushes when she feels Albert so close, and says that soon she will give him a gift. Hours later, they arrive at Albert's parents' palace, and Claude congratulates them for their successful mission and tells Albert that they will make a banquet for everyone. A banquet where ranks don't matter and everyone is equal. Later, Sei feels at ease at the banquet and realizes that Albert was right. Everyone is equal after a battle. While they eat, one of the maids serves salami to Sei, and she is so delighted with the taste that Albert promises to take her to the town market tomorrow to buy as many as she wants. The next day, Sei puts on her costume, and with Albert they go around the market, and she marvels at the sight of cabbage and says that she wants to make a dish using cabbage today, and that excites Albert because she always cooks for Johan and Jude first. After that, they go to the butcher shop where the butcher mistakes them for a couple, which makes them blush. At night, Sei cooks stuffed cabbage for Albert's parents and they delight in the taste, as does Albert, and for a moment she forgets about her nervousness and jokes with him, making Claude laugh, which makes them both blush. After that, Claude tells Sei she heard that the expedition was hard for her and tells her that she should go to their villa where there are hot springs, and she happily accepts. The next day, Albert escorts her to his villa and they stop halfway for her to rest, and she notices that all the other knights are following them on horseback, and Albert says there are very few people who don't ride horses. This surprises Sei, and he says that he will teach her to ride in his free time when they return to the capital, and that makes Sei happy. When they arrive at the villa, Sei immediately goes into the hot springs and melancholically thinks that her work as saint is finished and imagines Elizabeth telling her that the next thing is to get married. Sei is worried by this thought but quickly dismisses it. She just wants to continue as she is, researching plants and spending time with Albert. The mere idea of spending time alone with him excites her, and she plans to turn her writing classes into a picnic to which she will bring Japanese dishes. Suddenly, she falls silent and realizes that this is how a girl in love talks. Days after, they say goodbye to Albert's parents and they promise to visit them soon. Sometime later, things start to settle down in Salutania, and that includes hunting for Sei's hand in marriage. One day, an invitation to a play arrives for Yuri. He doesn't want to go, so he makes a little plane and throws it away. This is seen by Era, who is surprised by the elegance of the invitation to a play and tells Yuri that in Japan there are also plays. This catches his attention and he decides to go. Later, he gives Sei magic lessons, and at the end he invites her to go to the play with him, since he wants her to tell him the differences between the plays in her world and those here, and she accepts because she is curious too. In the afternoon, she tells Johan about her outing, and he warns her that the play is for nobles and she should ask her maids for help because she must wear formal attire. At night, Sei is picked up by Yuri, who acts like a gentleman and wants to kiss her hand, but she pushes him away in shock, and not only that, she complains about his proximity in the carriage too. When they arrive at the theater, Sei is amazed by its majesty and the chandeliers. This makes Yuri interested in how lighting works in Japan, and Sei tells her about electricity, which totally surprises Yuri. She then shows him how light works in Japan using a simple light spell, and he says that he has immersed himself so much in his research of magic that he has forgotten the simplicity of some things, which makes him wonder if he will ever have the golden magic that she possesses. When the lights go out, the audience does not stop looking at Sei and Yuri. The next day, rumors fly around Salutania. Everyone who saw Yuri and Sei in the play thinks that they are already engaged, and this reaches Elizabeth's ears, who tries to quiet the rumors, but it is a lost cause. In the afternoon, Johan goes to visit Albert and assures him that the rumors between Sei and Yuri are false. Although Albert says that he already knew that, he knows that there is no love between them and only curiosity about magic, but he is worried about not having invited Sei to see a play first, which makes Johan laugh. Then, Johan gets serious and says that all this must be the work of Yuri's father. Surely he wants to marry his son to Sei to gain more power, and he advises Albert to make a move now. So Albert thinks about how to tell Sei about his feelings and hopes that they can reach her. The next day, Sei goes to have tea with Elizabeth, and she scolds her for the scandal she caused by going alone with a man to a play. It was almost a formal courtship date, and Sei can't believe she made such a mistake. And not only that, Elizabeth makes her realize that these rumors will also affect Albert, since if he believes them, he could take out his application as a suitor to free her, and she will be free to follow her heart. That worries Sei, although the truth is that she and Albert are still nothing. Even so, Elizabeth insists that she must stop lying to herself and be honest with her heart. The next day, Sei tries to get as far away from Jude and also rejects an offer of lunch from Johan since she doesn't want more rumors about her and her friends. After that, she goes to her magic class with Yuri and Erhard, who also heard the rumors, spies on them to make sure their relationship is between a teacher and student. In the afternoon, Albert picks up Sei as he always does, and while he waits for her, Sei and Yuri stay talking. He tells her that she shouldn't worry. He doesn't think about marrying her even if there are rumors. But that's not all. He says that he already discovered that her source of golden power comes from her feelings. That surprises Sei and makes her blush, and all this is seen by Albert. And when Yuri passes by him, he whispers something to him. Erhard, who was watching everything, questions Yuri about what he said to Albert, and the Grand Magus is sincere, saying that he finally discovered that Sei's source of power is her love for Albert, although Erhard says he realized it a long time ago. On the other hand, Albert takes Sei to the institute as usual, and when they arrive, he asks her out on her next day off, and Sei reluctantly accepts as she is afraid that he will be upset if people spread rumors about them. Days later, Sei is dressed up elegantly by Murray and the maids, and Albert is delighted to see her more beautiful than ever. He takes her to a rose garden of the royal family, and all the flowers and roses are decorated with little lights as he tried to recreate the Christmas decorations which she told him about. Sei is very happy to see what he did for her, and he confesses that he always wants to make her happy now and in the future. He had decided to go slow with her, but he is not good at waiting and asks her to marry him. If she accepts, she must only take his hand, and Sei can no longer contain her love for him and takes his hand, hugging him. Suddenly, a shower of golden sparkles covers all of Salutania. The power that comes from Sei's love for Albert is so great that everyone is able to see it.